Hello crafty friends! I wanted to share a cute fall card with you today. All the supplies are linked in the description box below, so feel free to check it out. First, let's take a look at the main items I used. First of all, I have this adorable, absolutely awesome stamp set from Cloud9. Then there is the giant happy fall die, which will be my main sentiment on my card. And then I have the basic die set, the outside in stitched rectangles. And then, last but not least, there's this pretty fall leaves stencil. Okay, so I have a piece of Bristol smooth paper, which is about 4.5 by 5.5 inches. I will be cutting it down with my outside in rectangles later, so the measurements don't have to be exact at this point. I'm putting it down on my Wendy Vecchi Make art station, and I put some temporary adhesive on the back of my panel so it stays put during the stenciling. I'm starting with stencil A and putting it on top of my panel with the 4 magnets included with the Wendy Vecchi Make art station. I really wanted to use nice fall colors, so I'm taking my distress inks in some yellows and reds and greens. I have the mustard seed, wild honey and spiced marmalade. I also used the abandoned coral and born d'or. And for my greens I have twisted citron, mowed lawn and peeled paint. I started with my yellows and oranges. I have the light mustard seed and then I'm going over to wild honey and spiced marmalade. It really doesn't matter how you blend, I think it works out every time. It might be best to start out with the lightest shade though. You can always darken things up later. Then I'm doing the same thing with my greens and also with my reds, just going back and forth over different areas from the stencil. For my greens, I was a little scared of using the peeled paint. I don't use it that often, but it really gives such a fall vibe. I'm really happy I incorporated it into my color scheme. The twisted citron is a little bit too light for fall, I think, so together with the mowed lawn and the peeled paint, it really works nicely. Now for the big reveal, just look at these gorgeous colors on my panel. I'm already in love with it. Now I'm just repeating the same thing with the second stencil of the stencil set. I'm lining it up nicely so that my whole background is covered in fall leaves. Putting it down with the 4 magnets again and then starting all over with exactly the same colors I used before. So I have the abandoned coral, the born d'or. Then I also put down the wild honey, the mustard seed, the spiced marmalade, etc. Then again, the big reveal. Now my whole panel is covered in these gorgeous fall colors. I just love everything about it. I really love these gradients of orange to reds and then those different shades of green. I'm taking my outside in rectangle dies now, it's the largest one of the whole set. I'm positioning it exactly where I want it. Then I'm putting it down with purple tape and I will run it through my die cutting machine. Now I have this lovely stitching all around my panel. This gives it a whole nice finished look. My sentiment will be the focal point of the card, so I'm taking the giant happy fall die and I die cut it twice. First out of vanilla malt cardstock and then out of the ground coffee cardstock. I tried to use craft cardstock as well, but it was just a little bit too light. The deep brown ground coffee cardstock really makes the sentiment pop out. So I'm gluing both die cuts on top of each other a little bit on an offset. So it creates this kind of shadow behind the sentiment. I think this is a great method if you want your sentiment to stand out of a busy background. Now it's time to stamp my images. I'm using Cloud9 Jet Black ink and my Misty for this. I actually stamped my images twice to have a nice black impression. I won't be using the 3 of the set. It was just a little bit too big for my card and it didn't really fit with the giant sentiment as well. While I have my stamp set out, I can also stamp my additional sentiment. You're absolutely awesome. I mean, isn't that just adorable? I had to use it on this card. I stamped it with VersaFine black ink on the same vanilla malt cardstock. As always, I took out my trusty sentiment banners to die cut the sentiment using my mini die cutting machine from Heavy Doodle. Then I realized I totally forgot to ink blend the ground for my mice to stand on. So I die cut another outside-in stitched rectangle out of cilantro cardstock. Then I took a grassy border and die cut it as well so my mice could play with their freshly picked apples on the green grass. For the ink blending, I used the same mowed lawn and peeled paint as I did before. I just ink blend the top and a little bit of both the right and left edge. Ink blending really gives the card a lot of dimension and interest, so I definitely recommend doing this. After the ink blending is done, I can glue down my grass border to my stenciled card panel. Before adhering my images, I decided to make my card base first. So I took the same ground coffee cardstock as before and I trimmed it down to 8.5 by 5.5 and scored it at 4.25 and folded it to a finished card base. Then I put my stenciled card panel on top with liquid glue. As you can see, there is a nice little border all around the card. I find this makes the panel stand out even more. Then I can adhere everything. I first lay down both my sentiments just to make sure that everything gets placed at just the right place. I always start by putting all my images down before adhering anything. And then my trick is to combine both liquid glue and foam squares to create dimension. As you can see, I'm putting my mice down with some foam squares and then, like my barrel of apples, is adhered with just some liquid glue. This makes sure that there is a lot of variation in dimension, so some images are more in the front and some are more in the back. To finish it off, I'm gluing down both my sentiments. First, that giant happy fall one. Also, I just put it down with liquid glue so that it gives me a little bit of time to place it just right. And then also then that little banner that says "You're absolutely awesome." I put this one down with some foam squares, just like I did with those mice on the ground of the card. This finishes off the card for today. I am very happy with how it turned out. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope this gave you a little bit of inspiration. I will see you again very soon. Bye!